Hey, welcome back. We are going to continue talking about kidney sales today, and we are going to talk about another article. This article is by Erik Malmqvist. Malmqvist? Malmqvist? Okay, called Are Bans, not Bans, Bans on Kidney Sales Unjustifiably Paternalistic. There should be a quote at the end of that as well. Okay, so we will first talk about paternalism, what that is. We will then talk about hard versus soft paternalism. We will talk about group soft paternalism. And then we will talk about applying group soft paternalism to kidney sales, which will require, according to Malmqvist, three things that he wants to prove: harm to vendors, lack of autonomy, and finally, let's see, distinguishing between vendors. Maybe I'll put it this way: difficulty in distinguishing between vendors. Okay, so that's an outline, things I want to talk about. Okay, let's talk about paternalism then. Okay, so as I said last time in the previous set of slides, paternalism is forcing people to do things for their own good. And I think last time I gave examples like seatbelt laws, helmet laws, drug laws. These are all laws that restrict things that you can do, force you to act in a certain way for your own good. Okay? Now, in this country, so Malmqvist doesn't work here. He's in Sweden. But, in this country anyway, in America, we tend to be kind of anti-paternalist. We tend not to like paternalism. In America, we tend not to like paternalism. We tend to want to let people be free to do whatever they want, including hurt themselves, as long as they don't hurt anyone else. You want to hurt yourself? By all means, do it. We don't care. That's your life, your decision. Okay? But one way that we justify at least some paternalism, even in this country, is this distinction between soft versus hard, not set, soft versus hard paternalism. Okay? So hard paternalism says it's okay to interfere with autonomous choices for the sake of the person you're interfering with. Okay? And soft paternalism says it's okay to interfere only with non-autonomous choices for the sake of the person you're interfering with. Okay, so the difference is in whether the choice that you are interfering with is autonomously chosen. And remember what autonomy is? I discussed this a little bit last time. An autonomous choice is one that, the ideal for an autonomous choice is one that is rational, deliberated, thought about carefully, and so on, with good information, right? You are well informed, okay? That's the paradigm of an autonomous choice, okay? So an application of this would be, if someone is really sad right now and suicidal, but hasn't thought about it and is hasty, like say, oh man, my life sucks so bad, I just want to die, okay? That's a non-autonomous choice. To die, okay? In contrast, okay, if someone has some permanent condition and it will never get better. And they've thought about it a lot. You know, like some of these cases of euthanasia that in one of my classes we've talked about, in the other class we will talk about after this topic. You know, someone who has some like fatal illness, it's never going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. They're in a ton of pain, you know. In those cases, maybe dying is okay. And they thought about it a lot. Maybe their decision to die should be respected. It's all about the difference between an autonomous choice to die versus a temporary, you know, like a hasty choice to die. Okay? Another example is just children versus adults. Okay? Adults, when we make decisions, we tend to be careful and think about the consequences. We have good information. Children aren't like that. They're dumb. They make decisions impulsively and so on. So paternalism against children, we tend to think is okay. Paternalism against adults often is not okay, we tend to think. And that's because of this difference between hard and soft paternalism. Okay. So that's hard and soft paternalism. Now, applying, okay, next concept, group soft paternalism. And to understand this, we need to understand another distinction first. We first have to distinguish the effect of an action from the justification of that action. The effects, there could be many effects. So for example, one effect of driving my car is pollution. But that's not why, I hope, that's not why I drive my car. I drive it, the justification of driving is to get somewhere, you know, faster. Okay, that's the justification, but I know that another effect that occurs from my driving my car, I don't have an electric car, is pollution. Okay? Similarly, Malmqvist says, think about the following kind of law. A law banning smoking in restaurants might have the effect of doing good for smokers. It says like, hey, you come here and eat, you can enjoy your meal, but you're not allowed to smoke in this restaurant. That can be good for the smoker, okay? It's forcing them to do something for their own good, okay? But that's an effect, it's not the justification often. Might have the effect of doing good for smokers, but usually the justification is to do good for non-smokers, right? For the people who don't want to have to put up, who don't smoke and don't want to have to put up with cigarette smoke in the restaurant, usually the justification is to protect them, okay? Not to protect the smokers, all right? So a law banning smoking in restaurants would not be considered paternalistic. For the law to be paternalistic, it would have to be justified by good effects on smokers, right? Forcing them not to smoke, and we justify it by the good effect on them. But it turns out, no, it's not justified by the good effect on smokers, it's justified by the good effect on non-smokers. So a law banning smoking in restaurants need not be paternalistic. The goal is not to improve the lives of smokers, the goal is to improve the lives, the goal is not to improve the lives of the people who you're forcing not to smoke. The goal is to improve other people's lives. Okay, so that's the first step. The distinction between justification and effect, okay? Now notice that there are ways in which we can apply paternalism in what Malmqvist calls a group soft way, okay? So an example of group soft paternalism, okay? So we have like age restrictions on things like driving, drinking, other things. I'm sure you all are aware of this. You probably, you've passed your driving one. You maybe are about to pass your drinking one, okay? So you might wonder, roughly, these seem paternalistic. These are at least partly paternalistic. We restrict children from driving and drinking because they're too stupid to know how to drive properly, and they're too stupid to know how to, control their own drinking. Okay, actually, let's maybe focus just on drinking, not on driving, because one rationale from restricting children from driving is that they'll, hit adults. It'll be bad for everybody else who has to share the road with those kids. So just think about drinking. age restrictions on drinking, roughly this seems paternalistic. Okay, because kids maybe are too dumb to understand how to drink responsibly. All right, here's an objection though. Some 20-year-olds are responsible enough to drink, okay? Some 22-year-olds are not. I'm sure you know people in both categories, right? So the objection basically goes, age, this age of your 21st birthday is not a sharp boundary between people who are not or too dumb to be responsible and people who can be responsible. Okay, so what do we say about that? What justifies a sharp age cutoff? What justifies a sharp age cutoff when kind of maturity isn't so sharp and, you know, people mature at different rates so that some 20-year-olds can be more mature than some other 22-year-olds? Malmqvist's answer, Erik Malmqvist, EM, the answer is group soft paternalism. Okay, so what he has in mind is the following idea. He says the goal of restricting drinking to 21 plus is to protect the stupid, you know, under 21. Maybe I'll just say the stupid minors, the people who are under 21. Okay, we know that as an effect, it will also, you know, protect all the other minors too, but our goal is not to protect them. Okay, our goal is to protect basically the dumb kids, the ones who don't know any better. All right, so he says this is an example, or this is the best rationale we have for this kind of sharp cutoff for age is group soft paternalism. There's this bigger group, all the kids, and the bigger group can be subdivided into the dumb kids and the smart kids. And even though we restrict all the kids, both the dumb ones and the smart one, the goal is only to protect the dumb ones. Unfortunately, that means we also have to restrict the smart ones, and I apologize, you know, we apologize to all the smart kids. You have to be restricted, but the goal is in order to protect the dumb kids. Okay, so the goal is still soft paternalistic, even though you restrict everybody in that age group. Okay, so the goal is still soft paternalistic, you know, restricting non-autonomous choice, even if the effect is also to restrict autonomous choice. Does that make sense? Okay, why am I asking? It's a lecture you can't even answer. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. All right, so group soft paternalism. So now Malmqvist wants to apply that, Malmqvist wants to apply that to kidney sales, okay? He says we restrict everyone from selling their kidneys, but the goal is to protect the non-autonomous. Okay, the people who would stupidly try to sell their kidney. Okay, we recognize that there will also be the effect that no one else will be able to sell kidneys. No one else, including the autonomous, I'll put that in parentheses just for emphasis, including the autonomous, will be able to sell kidneys, you know, and that's too bad. But the point of the restriction on everyone is to protect the non-autonomous. Okay, so he thinks this is, according to Malmqvist, the best rationale for restricting or banning the sale of kidneys. Not hard paternalism, where we are trying to force everybody, we want to force everybody not to do this thing for their own good. Rather, our goal is to force the non-autonomous to do these things for their own good, and as collateral damage, everyone else has to be forced to do these things too, and that's too bad, but that's the easiest or most efficient way to achieve our goal. Okay. Now, Malmqvist concedes, in order to make this argument work, okay, in order to make this argument work, he wants to prove three things. Three criteria for the argument to work. Okay? He has to prove, first of all, that there is harm to vendors, that it's bad to sell your kidneys. It's bad for you to sell your kidneys. So he has to prove that. Okay? Second, he has to prove that many vendors would be non-autonomous, right? If every person who wants to sell a kidney is autonomous, then group soft paternalism wouldn't work. There would be no non-autonomous people to restrict. Okay. And then finally, he wants to prove that it would be difficult to distinguish the autonomous from non-autonomous vendors. Okay, so he wants to prove all of these things. Okay. So, go over the first one first, harm to vendors. Okay, so Malmqvist is keenly aware that his critics will say things like, Erik Malmqvist, he's keenly aware that I acknowledge my critics will argue or try to argue, maybe I'll emphasize, try to argue that giving up your kidney is safe and that people, we allow people to take jobs that are in fact more dangerous than giving up your kidney. Like we let people be coal miners and do all kinds of dangerous things like toll booth attendants who have to breathe in the toxic fumes from cars all day long. Okay, we allow people to do those things, and those things are more dangerous than giving up your kidney. Okay? And, he acknowledges that, and that we allow people to give up their kidneys for free. In other words, donate their kidneys. So, he has to face this challenge that Radcliffe Richards and her co-authors articulated, right? That if you think it's so harmful to be with, to give up a kidney, why do we not ban just free donation? Because free donation also gives up a kidney. Okay. So, but what he's going to say is, the problem is that maybe the choice to sell a kidney is more likely non-autonomous than the choice to, take dangerous jobs or donate a kidney for free. Okay? So the worry is, although he concedes, yes, giving up a kidney is for the most part safe. First of all, he'll want to say there are still some risks. We saw in the last presentation, there are still some risks of giving up a kidney. Most of the risks are from surgery, from dying in surgery, but still there are some risks, okay? And second, it might be, he's going to try to argue that it is, that the choice to sell a kidney is going to tempt people who tend to be non-autonomous, tend to be poor, less well-educated, desperate, and so on. These people will make non-autonomous choices, and they wouldn't necessarily make a non-autonomous choice to, work a dangerous job or to donate a kidney for free. Okay? The people who are likely to choose to sell a kidney. Hold on just a second. Okay, sorry about that. The people who are likely to sell a kidney are likely to be poor, uneducated, desperate. Okay? And in this group of people, they're more likely to make non-autonomous choices than other groups of people would be. Okay. And that's actually, kind of the next point he wants to prove, which is kidney sales and autonomy. Okay? He wants to remind us, Erik Malmqvist, that the argument need not assume that all or even most choices to sell a kidney are non-autonomous. Okay? Only that many would be non-autonomous. Okay? And he just makes the point that I made on the previous slide. Typically, only the poor and the desperate would resort to selling their kidney, and that desperation might increase the chance of not thinking the decision through, making mistakes in reasoning, okay, ignoring long-term risks in favor of short-term gain, right? Okay. So the desperately poor, to sum up, the desperately poor are vulnerable to compromised decision-making. Okay? Okay. All right. Last point, I guess, here, distinguishing between vendors. Okay. Here, Malmqvist's point is basically that we'd have to examine a large number of people, okay, to see who's autonomous, who's not. Large number of people because, as we saw in the previous section, because the wait list is so big. If we sell kidneys at what you might call a market rate where you get enough kidneys to meet the demand, where supply can meet demand, that's going to be a ton of kidneys. So you have to look at a large number of people to see who's autonomous and who's not. Okay? Each case would be difficult because of various pressures that people face that could apply in one individual case but not in another individual case. Okay? So then we would be faced with a difficult choice. And the difficult choice is either make a detailed assessment of each case, which is costly, okay, or have a looser assessment, which would, have errors in it, right? And he says either of these things is basically impractical, okay? And because of that, it's just too difficult to distinguish between vendors, and therefore we should just protect them all by banning kidney sales. Now, for most of these videos, I have not interjected my own thoughts on these issues. I want you to think about these issues and think of your thoughts and your critical reactions. I'll just say here, though, that I'm not convinced by Malmqvist's argument here, because I feel like we have to do this already in other areas of medicine. For example, if you have to have an operation, we have to explain things, we have to make sure that the patient gets informed consent. We should just continue to do that for vendors. We should treat potential kidney vendors the same way we treat people who want to go in for surgery, to get their hernia fixed or to get their gallbladder removed or something. We have to make sure that they're being autonomous, and we have to do the same thing for kidney sales. Okay, so that's one potential criticism of Malmqvist's views. All right, so that's it. That's all I wanted to say about kidney sales for this week. Thanks.